Formula One drivers are some of the most highly paid sports people in the world, but exactly how much are they paid? Well, I'm going to run through that in 8 seconds' time, so don't go away. So how much do F1 drivers make? Well, one thing's for sure, no team is going to tell you what they're paying their driver, and no driver is going to tell you what the team is paying them. That's all confidential information. But other drivers and other team principals will gladly speculate about what other teams are paying other drivers. So here's what the industry thinks that drivers are being paid. And it starts off at the very top with Max Verstappen from Red Bull, something like $55 million a year. And we're talking US here. Lewis Hamilton at 35. Charles Leclerc, 24. Lando Norris, 20. Carlos Sainz, 12. Sergio Perez, 10. Valtteri Bottas, 10. George Russell on 8 million. Esteban Ocon, 6 million. Fernando Alonso on 5 million. Pierre Gasly, 5 million, along with Kevin Magnussen. And then we drop down to Alex Albon on 3. Lance Stroll, 2. Nico Hulkenberg, 2. Nick De Vries, 2. Now that he's gone, that's Daniel Ricciardo, and I'll talk about him in depth in just a moment. Zhou Guanyu and Oscar Piastri on 2. Now, this was done prior to Oscar re-signing his contract, so I would suggest that that figure has bumped up markedly. To what? I'm going to guess 8. And at the bottom of the field, Yuki Tsunoda on 1, along with Logan Sargent. And I'm going to suggest Liam Lawson will be getting $1 million a year, pro rata for the number of races he drives. Back to Daniel Ricciardo, I'm going to suggest he's on $2 million a year from AlphaTauri, but he would have lost many millions from his promotional work that he was offered at Red Bull. Some figures say he was getting $60,000 a day to do promotional stuff for that team. So what does a driver have to do for that money? Well, obviously they have to drive at 23 races this year, most of them anyway. And that's the bit that they love about the sport. Well, there'll be simulator sessions, not for all drivers, but certainly for a lot of them. There'll be promotional events. How many? Well, that depends on what's negotiated in the contract. Some have to wear the sponsor's clothing, and that will be the likes of Lewis and George wearing Tommy Hilfiger. Yuki Tsunoda, Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson will all be wearing AlphaTauri gear, and Pierre and Esteban will be dressed in Beluti. On top of that, drivers will be required to attend team sponsor events in their paddock lounges. There'll be TV interviews, sponsor track days, launches and so forth. But what other avenues of income are there for drivers? Personal sponsorships, the likes of Pierre Gasly with Hawker's sunglasses, Sergio Perez with Telcel, Oscar Piastri with Quadlock. And what are they worth? Sky's the limit. Could be anywhere from $10,000 to $5 million. Some drivers get paid to speak at corporate events. For instance, at Paddock Club events where they might speak for 15 minutes. What's that worth? Well, could be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 depending on the driver. There's memorabilia, signed prints, race suits, helmets, shoes and boots, that sort of thing. Roughly, $2,000 to $100,000 could be a fair range for that over a year. And then there are those who have business ventures. Daniel Ricciardo's wine and clothing line, Valtteri Bottas's gin and now wine. Fernando Alonso runs a karting centre. What's obvious is that these drivers have huge audiences, and those people are more than willing to buy what many of these drivers are offering. So what do they do with all that money? Well, for a start, they would have a number of costs. For instance, a manager. What's he or she going to take? Probably anywhere from 10 to 20% of their earnings. All earnings? Well, that just depends. But certainly if that manager is negotiating a contract, they will certainly be taking a percentage. And why would a manager be on, say, 20% instead of 10? Well, it could be that that manager put in money in the early stages of the driver's career and has a contract that says a certain percentage of the driver's income for a certain period goes back to that manager as a payback for investing in them. A bit like backing a racehorse. So does every driver have a manager? Yes. Logan Sargent has Harry Soden and Gary Catt. George Russell is also managed by Harry Soden. Yuki Tsunoda this year appointed Mario Miyakawa as his manager. Lando Norris works with Mark Berryman. Lance Stroll has a finance manager. Nicholas Todd manages Charles Leclerc. Daniel Ricciardo is managed by CAA. Raymond Vermeulen, who was also Jos Verstappen's manager, is Max's manager. Esteban Ocon works with Michelle. Jacques Hextall Smith manages Alex Albon. Albon. Guillaume Le Goff manages Pierre Gasly and also, for a short period, managed Nick de Vries. Carlos Sainz is managed by his cousin Carlos Honora. Kevin Magnussen is managed by Rasmus. Sergio Perez is managed by Julian Jacobi. Valtteri Bottas has Didier Cotton on side. Raul Spanger works alongside Nico Hulkenberg. Penny Tho manages Lewis Hamilton. Alberto manages Fernando Alonso. Ex-F1 racer Mark Webber and his wife Anne manage Oscar Piastri. And that leaves us with just two. Liam Lawson managed by Grant McDonald. And this is Candice, who works alongside Zhou Guanyu. So what might a driver spend their money on when they're not racing? Well, Max Verstappen spends a fair whack of it on his private plane. Daniel Ricciardo has invested in property. He's got a home in Los Angeles and a farm in Western Australia. Lando Norris likes watches. Lewis loves fashion, although whether he pays for it or gets it for free is not 100% certain. I'm sure some of the outfits he buys, but a lot of the other ones are provided to him from the companies in return for exposure, and he does get huge exposure for those brands. But it's fair to say that there are only a few drivers making mega bucks. Those at the bottom half of the field, yeah, they're on good money, but they've had to expend quite a lot to get to where they are, and maybe they have investors or family that they're going to pay back. And if they are in the bottom half of the field, chances are their time in Formula One is not very lengthy. They might have 2 to 3 years. And it's fair to say that they've put in a lot of effort over those preceding years to get them to the point where they're able to compete in this, the highest level of motorsport. So there you have a little glimpse into the world of an F1 driver and the money involved. Now's the time for you to do something for me, and I'm going to ask you to subscribe to my channel. Please. You'll find all of my digital images at prostarpics.com for a wide range of F1 driver prints, merchandise, photo books and wall art. Go to kimellman.com, and for my best images live from the track and during the week, Instagram is the place to be. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate. Well, most of the time they're busy and travelling, so they don't have a... No.